enjoy the show, play on my channel.
How are you, John?
Not too bad. Thanks for having me.
Oh man, we try to highlight the indie content creators, especially comic creators, on Tales of the Hunted. And Frank and myself both out in the con community, meeting a lot of different people. And then when I saw your Kickstarter for the Drumstick of Destiny, it was one of those ideas that I thought, you know what, this is a comic that I'm very glad somebody made, because even just from the sound of it, it sounds very, Jack Black, Tenacious D. But then I read the intro of Black Sabbath and Alchemy, and I'm like, I need to know more. So it's a very interesting idea that you have here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we've been cooking up for a while, so I'm excited that it's definitely been our flagship title.
So what are some of the other titles that you have on top of this one?
So we're wrapping up our mini series for a book called Child Possession Services, which is about a social worker who works with kids who are or were recently possessed by demons. So it's a little bit a farcical kind of taste on like John Constantine.
Yeah, I've always wondered. Who's following up with these kids.
Right.
What are they?
And then we've done.
You know where your children are.
But I mean, that's a very interesting premise, just even for a book, and that's a mini series you have that you.
Yeah. September we'll be wrapping that up with the 4th issue. I am a social worker by day, so it's also kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on poorly run government agencies and working in the helping professions and things like that. So
right, yeah. Well, that makes sense. And Drumstick of Destiny. I see here that you're one of the co-creators of this project, as well as the letterer and writer of the script. Comic book scripts are one thing that I started to dabble into after I wrote a little bit of the movie scripts, but comic scripts are, that's the start of the idea, and then getting on board the whole team for this idea. Did you already have some people in the industry that you wanted to work with specifically that you met?
I definitely did, and my co-creator on Drumsticks of Doom is Dan Doherty. He's a musician and artist here out of Chicago-ish, Illinois. So he and I have actually known each other. We met through an anthology that I helped put together called Banthology, which was basically so many of us in the industry realized we were all used to be in bands, and now we were comic creators. So I said, well, then let's make music-themed stories by former or current musicians as well. That's how I met Dan. A friend of ours introduced us through that, and I've just loved his work, and he's become a good friend. And it took me a long time to kind of have the story where I really wanted to work with him, and I was like so fortunate that he has time in his schedule, because he is a professional artist as well as a teacher. And yeah, about 5 years ago, I finally approached him and said, Dan, I've been kind of writing this story behind the scenes. Would you be interested in being my co-creator on it? And thankfully he was able to do it, because Dan, again, I wanted someone who could have the artistic chops, which Dan has in spades. But it's good to have someone as myself. I'm a recovering musician, I like to say. He's still an active musician. So it's not just that he knows how to draw the gear. He knows what it's like to play on stage. He knows what it's like to have that feeling of, kind of chasing the big crowd coming to your show, and that feeling you get. And it's just, I think that's been very important in kind of developing a story that's, pretty personal in Drumsticks of Doom.
Oh, you're definitely going to be speaking to the comic book nerd that's also a music nerd at the same time, and I don't think there's been enough crossover in that kind of realm of music and, comic books enough, because there was the one infamous game that everybody remembers, Brutal Legend, which was Jack Black, and it brought rock music especially right into the fold of video games. And now this is, helping rock music. Just how do you make a rock and roll comic?
Well, it's difficult, right? Because it's a soundless medium. And I realized, again, part of it is, not just being a musician since I was, about 14 years old, just being in bands and that being part of your life. You're the kind of person who, sits in the car and waits until the song ends that you were listening to before you go in the house. Those kind of people are the people that I connect with, that I wanted to speak to. And like you, I didn't see it as much in the industry. You know, there was good examples like Scott Pilgrim, you know, contained an awesome musical Sex Bomb, and there's been other books. There's an awesome book from Magnetic Press called Doom Boy, which is about a heavy metal boy and him trying to play music to relate to people. There's another one called Moonhead and the Music Machines, which I believe it was from Fantagraphics, and just kind of reading those and realizing, you know, I was kind of coming to the end of my musical journey and wanted to transition into something else creative. Comic book writing came along. And again, I kind of saw a void there, but unfortunately I kind of sat on the idea way too long. So nowadays, there's tons of books like that. Everybody's coming out with, what was it? Spectrum from, I believe it's from Mad Cave, just came out, and Evie and the Helsings, which is a Kickstarted book, and there's every other month. Maurice and the Metal is another one out of Australia. There's all these creators like myself and Dan that just wanted to see music themed comics, so we're seeing them more and more and more. But you're right. When I was growing up, I didn't see it that much, and when I saw it, and you see someone like Brian Lee O'Malley or these other great illustrators that can make you feel like you're hearing the sound on the page.
Yeah.
It's just so fascinating to me. And I just knew that, you know, if I took a crack at writing comics, I really wanted to kind of try that. And again, of course, I do the easy part, right? I'm like, you know, I type a sentence that says, you know, they're getting really into the music, and then Dan does the hard part of, you know, making it feel like it's alive. And he does such an amazing job. I'm just so proud to work with him on this book. And I'm fascinated by that. How do you make people feel sound on the page, which is such a big part, obviously, of music. It's been really fun to kind of explore that with Dan and kind of take our crack at it, you know?
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, because even when you look at it, I was thinking if you look at like the bigs in Marvel, they will quote a song and then they'll infamously change some kind of lyric in there so they don't get sued. Sure. But they'll try to make that music on the page and make you feel it on the page, but it's kind of, it's disconnected there to where just having that as a goal, especially in a musically based comic, makes sense of having to really have a good, you know, a good command on how you make that sound on the page, because if you do it right, that will really reward the fans who are actually reading this and, you know, getting into the comic.
Yeah, that's been our hope. And Dan and I did talk early on about like hiding QR codes in the art and stuff like that. And it was Dan who really said, yeah, you know, I don't think we need to do that. Like I do add some, I sneak some in on like the intro. Sometimes I'll put like a QR code on the credits page to, you know, kind of get people pumped if they want to pull up a song that kind of inspired the issue or something like that. Yeah. But I think he was right. We didn't need to go that far. We didn't need to make a motion comic or a soundtrack to it. I think again, if the right music fan picks it up, they'll put their own, you know, soundtrack in their head to it. You know,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a lot like, you know, the whole medium itself of comics is that you're essentially reading through this, but this is a movie on a page for you. And now adding in that flair of music too, now you have the visual and your auditory system working with you in your imagination. So it's more of a in-depth experience if you think about it like that, because, you know, comics just coming alive is kind of a whole thing nowadays, especially with the big
And
screen.
I've seen a ton of creators, and it's cool. You know, I've seen good examples of like motion comics and, you know, animated comics, things like Hellboy and stuff. But I think what people sometimes miss is that sometimes when they say, I didn't really like how they adapted that comic to a movie. And I think part of that is because it takes away, again, that imagination that you're adding to the comic. You're adding so much to a comic when you read it, or a novel. And you're like, you know, that character didn't even really sound like that in my head, you know, and it kind of, you may not even notice it, but subconsciously you're like, it's not the vision that you had, especially if it's something you really, really, really like. Yeah, it can be really difficult. There's good examples of people translating that, but I think we don't need to try as hard as some people do to make comics not the medium that they are, right? We don't need to add sound and motion and stuff like that.
Sometimes it's good to just, if you're a burger company, it's good to focus on the burger.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter if you have a slide and an easy drive through and, you know, coupons every Sunday if your burger sucks.
Right.
Make a good burger, and you know you're good. I mean, outside of that is
And it's
real
focusing
thing.
on the story, which, you know, there's a lot of movies and other mediums that have very lazy writing, and indie comics are not the medium that do that, because a lot of the indie comics that come across our borders here at Tales of the Hunted, I don't think we've had one repeat idea. And all of them are interesting. They're not something that, oh, well, that sounds like Captain America with a guitar. You know, it doesn't sound like that. It sounds original, and it sounds like an idea that people want to get into.
I agree with you. I always get frustrated when people tell me, I'm not enjoying what I'm reading, or, you know, Marvel, DC are putting out XYZ and it's not good. And it's like, man, you aren't even trying, because every week somebody in the community, and it can be at bigger publishers, but especially in the indie community, they're putting out world-class stuff every month in and month out. Auto bio stuff, slice of life stuff, manga, you know, Western comics, European comics. If you're not reading what you love in comics, you're not trying, because we are in the golden age of comics. There's so many.
Yeah.
You can throw a rock and find a good one. You just got to put in a little bit of effort to look for it. And there's just always great stuff. Comics is the best. And why everybody's reaching for comics now, right? To adapt to other things. They're realizing, oh, wait, these are the original cool stories, you know?
That's why we're here. You know, I'm looking for an independent artist and, you know, stories, and see just to get them out there, you know, just hunt them. Why should we hunt you? You know, come out here and let us know what you're doing. And this is what you are. Man, I love the black and white cover.
Yeah.
I mean, I can really hear a cord getting crunched. You know, I mean, that lightning behind it.
There's a
black and white,
There's a simplicity to the black and white pages, but on top of being cost effective, there's something to black and white comics that I think add to the whole experience and story of what you're saying. Not that a good color page won't bring out, you know, different things in the panels that you want, but it's a lot like what we're saying of the reader's imagination on what they're interpreting and what they see in just black, white, and gray is a lot of times, like you look at one of the instant favorites, Walking Dead. All black and white. You get a color cover, and that's it. And people went apeshit over it.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you guys acknowledged that. We knew going in that was going to be a bit of a hindrance for some people. Some people just don't like black and white comics. But for me, there was a couple choices there. I think that the style of the story just fits that, right? It feels like a black and white comic, and I'm glad that we stuck with that. And that's not to say I've worked with some world-class colorists. You know, Wesley Wong has covered for us. He's amazing. Mike Spicer covered a color for us. I mean, he's like a god at coloring. There's certainly awesome, you know, color artists. But for this story, it really fit the heavy metal vibe we were going for, you know, those old, you know, magazines and stuff like that. It really wanted that kind of feel to it. And Dan's early work that I saw, including our work in Banthology together, and then he did a couple early stories, which, you know, reading them as a fan before Dan was my friend, I knew I would want to work with him. He did an awesome comedy called Bob Howard, the Plumber of the Unknown, about this plumber who gets sucked into like mystical worlds through the pipes and stuff.
Love it.
And it was in black and white. He did a bunch of anthology pieces, again, some for us, and they were all in black and white. So when I got ready to work with Dan, I'd seen he's done other great series like Touching Evil, which is like a thriller series he did for Source Point Press. That's all in color, and I love that book, and I love, you know, all of Dan's work. But I just kind of connecting to his work early on, I see it in my head in black and white now. So I you know, we had talked about it a while. He's like, you know, I really have a great colorist. We could bring them on. And I was like, you know what? This story, when I'm thinking about writing a story with you, is now coming to my head in black and white. Let's do it in black and white. And so there was two reasons. Financial, you're right. It does save, you know, we are an indie book. But it also felt right for the book. Right. And again, it just fit Dan's art in my head. And now I can't, you know, now that we've worked on 7 issues together, I don't know if I could work with Dan in color.
Well, and then you have metal actual covers. That's something that I feel like every Kickstarter has to have a thing. You got to have some kind of niche that the fans are going to want. And a special cover is always a way into comic fans' hearts.
Absolutely. And
with the
I'm very
Kickstarters.
hesitant with that. I don't even like single issues, to be honest with you. I'm a bad comic fan. I don't like variant covers. But again, I've been doing this for about 15 years now. It took me a long time to come around to, it's not about what you want. Offer people like that kind of thing. If they find joy in it and they want to support you through that, why would you limit that? Now, we don't go extreme as some. We don't do 11 covers and, all different versions. But, within a certain sense, I said, okay, I have a heavy metal comic, and I was at, I believe, C2E2. I walked past Brian Polito, Lady Death's table, and he had a metal comic, and I picked it up, and I'm like, this is like the coolest thing ever. Like, I thought it was super dorky before, but then when you pick one up, you're like, this thing is thick. You could like cut someone in the head with it.
Yeah.
Like, I have a heavy metal comic. Why don't I have heavy metal covers, And
Makes
then,
sense.
so we've been doing them since. So they make sense for the book. Like, we don't do them for every book, but for this one, they certainly make sense. And the people who buy them just love them. Like, sometimes people buy multiple copies, and one of our fans got a whole set graded. So he has the only graded copies in the world. So he was super excited about that. And again, if they find joy in it, don't be such a stubborn old man and just say, no, we're only doing one cover and one thing. And if it doesn't fund the book, then we quit. Like, you gotta be adaptable to what the audience wants,
Have to adapt, yeah.
Well, especially in the day and age that we do have with the Kickstarter, and a lot of people will have variant covers, and you'll have different, derivations on that. The metal cover helps you stand out because it's not something that, people will readily think of. The beanies and the other kind of tchotchkes are nice stuff for people to have and hold on to. Like, no, man, where'd you get that? Yeah. The little table tchotchkes I love. Because those are something that even when I go to cons, I'm just like, well, I can just set this somewhere and just appreciate it. Yeah. That's like half of this house. Yeah. It's just stuff that I just set it down and like, all right, you look good there. And I forget about it. So stuff like that. You can
probably see behind me. I'm definitely, I got lots of stuff.
Oh, yeah. I see the Star Wars. My brother has Star Wars black figures and Funko Pops, and we got Fallout, and I think there's a plasma rifle over there. There's just stuff like that will always help fans really just hone in on your brand, especially if you get just your own line of drumsticks.
We did do the drumsticks for one campaign where I spray painted the logo on there, and then Dan and I signed them. And again, not something I would have thought about. Other people were like, first we did guitar picks because they're easy to mail, right?
Right.
Even though it's Drumsticks of Doom. People kept asking, where are the drumsticks? You're doing a book called Drumsticks of Doom. You're a drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they are such a pain in the ass to ship because they're so huge.
Yeah.
I put it off and I was like, all right, fine. I'll try it out. I got these cool, like, glow in the dark ones that Dan and I could sign, and they were gone. They were gone in like an hour. Everybody was like crazy for them. And I was like, wow. See, again, listen to what your audience wants, what they get excitement from. I never thought anyone in the world would want a signed drumstick from me, but people were buying multiple. So
yeah,
it was fun to see.
Oh, absolutely.
But it was a pain in the ass to ship, so we haven't done it since.
So one of the things that I do love to see are just like interesting things at cons. What's one of the most interesting things you've seen, either vendor-wise, just at a con?
I feel like maybe just because, again, we have to do a lot to fund the books. The single issues themselves don't carry the cost of paying your artists and running campaigns and stuff like that. So people are getting very, very adventurous. I know a fellow creator who makes her own hot sauce.
Oh, wow.
Themes it for the book. And, because it's also very good hot sauce and fresh.
Yeah.
People love it. So that was one of the funniest things I saw. She sells out anytime she makes a batch. And
hot sauce.
yeah. So, and
That's
then, some people will just come up and see the hot sauce and just want that. And she'll be like, oh, by the way, there's a book that this is themed after. Can I tell you about it? And I was like, wow, what a great idea. Again, myself being a grumpy old man, probably would have never thought of that 10 years ago. But the hot sauce, I've seen people do the lots of plushies and stuffies and stuff like that are becoming, we've done one. But yeah, the hot sauce and the food themed with your comic was pretty unique to me.
Oh, I mean, I thought I was original with the chocolate. We just started selling chocolate, and we themed it off of the podcast and stuff on the network. Tales of the Peanut Butter Squares and Marshmallow Squares, Percy Pops. you know, Matt Mann's PB Cocoa Cups. So I was like, damn,
Nice.
that tops it all. But hot sauce, didn't even think of that. That's a good one though.
That's a nice spin. Yeah,
Because
that's a
hot
nice
sauce
one.
is one of those things. Like everybody finds their own, you know, favorite flavor of hot sauce, almost like a comic book. So it kind of goes hand in hand with that, and a lot of different
Absolutely.
flavors you can go in there too.
Absolutely.
So that is really brilliant. That's a
Yeah. Well, if
doesn't
anybody's
like hot
interested
sauce?
and they're listening to this, she also does offer it through the Kickstarters, even though I know it's hard to mail things
Oh,
like
I
that. But it's
imagine.
called Path of the Pale Rider is the book by Lori Calcaterra and her team. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh,
She's
wow.
always thinking of different ways to
You
get
have
people
to.
to
You
notice
have
her
to.
at the shows, and it's cool.
You have to. You
I
have
haven't
to.
done any I haven't done anything edible yet. I'm not ready to take that plunge, but
Well, there's so
I'm
many
definitely
other things. I mean,
into picking it up.
Hard candy. I'll tell you that. Hard candy. Real easy recipe.
Tell the story
You
of
get
hard candy,
flavors.
yeah.
You can brand it how you like. Hard candy is definitely the way to go on that one. You
One
know.
of one of the characters in our book is a you know, because it's mythical and magical universe. There's a hybrid creature called an arachnigator. There's a
Yes.
spider and an alligator. I would like to make, maybe if I could do like a formed cookie or hard candy piece, you know, of an alligator with 8 legs. That would be super fun.
That'd be interesting. That'd be interesting. An arachnigator. And just getting that. I mean, you can also, you're missing the easy one, which is just you get a mold done of a little guitar, and then you just have chocolate.
Oh yeah, you're right.
guitars.
That's the easy one, right?
Chocolate guitars. We're getting a PJ PJ and WH bar.
Chocolate,
And
chocolate picks or plectrum.
oh my
Oh,
god,
good one.
little chocolate picks.
Instead of chocolate
you know,
chips, chocolate
or-
picks. You guys got all right.
man. And then
I'll
like
give you
little
50%
chocolate
of the cut on that.
drumsticks. Oh, I'm telling you, you make them like those Pocky sticks. You know what I'm saying?
A little thicker. you
And
know,
a little
just-
thicker than Pockies, and then you just have the drumstick, the Pocky sticks of destiny, and they just have boom, sell them as a little box.
Pickups. Imagine you have chocolate pickups.
Oh
All
my
right,
gosh.
I'm gonna have to get in the kitchen and figure all this out.
Shelf
Little
stable
chocolate stomp box.
marketing. You know what I mean? We're gonna
We did-
man.
We did take the plunge out into the plushie
Oh, look
arena,
at that.
so we had
Oh,
these
look
made.
at that.
the plushies.
That's
People
kinda
will
cool.
love. I
That's-
saw the
I was-
plushie on there.
I was shocked when, again, a peer who was much more adventurous than me said, "No, John, it's actually cheaper than you think to produce your own stuffed animal." And I started looking into it, and I was like, because my daughter kind of helped when we were first designing the character. She did the
Yeah.
first like initial sketch of him, so
Yeah.
it's kind of, now it's become like its own thing within the universe, and
Yeah.
her being excited about making her own stuffed animal, and
Oh,
Dan and I being excited about, you know, having something different to offer at our table. So it's been fun to, again, to get over the grumpiness and try some different things.
Get
Yeah.
in that kitchen, damn it.
Getting over the grumpiness is
Yeah, I know.
definitely a key thing, because
Yes.
life will definitely get you in that grumpy rut.
Absolutely.
You just you get happy with your routine, and you just like, no, I like it in my routine, but switching it up every once in a while, you know, and then that eventually that's how you get chocolate alligators,
Chocolate
and then
drumsticks.
and then with chocolate,
Chocolate
drumsticks, and then
chocolate picks and
chocolate picks.
chocolate wafer. What do you call it? Pickups for the guitar.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
We
yeah,
could do the pedals too, like the stomp boxes. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
we'll have a whole
No.
line.
Look at
Forget this
this.
comic stuff.
a whole
Dude.
line
See
of
you
just,
guys later. See you guys later. I'm gonna in the kitchen. You know,
you know, just
chocolate.
telling
crazy,
you,
man.
people love chocolate. Just
know I
don't
do.
ship it during the summer months.
Yeah, I'll probably end up eating half of it myself.
Oh,
not
don't
bad
I know that struggle? Don't I know that struggle all too well? But you know, that's one of the best things about putting out comics is you can't really eat them. I mean, not too much. A little bit of fiber would be good for you, but overall, do you find people like doing? Do you like doing the digital, paperless versions of your comics, or do you want to keep it more traditional of keeping it to the paperback and the hardback and such?
I mean,
Correct.
there was definitely a time where I was like digital only comic reader because I had just so much paper in my house. But I've definitely come back around to it. I definitely am a paper person. I like the aesthetics of holding a comic, reading it in hand, seeing how it prints on paper. But I do love the digital aspect. We're part of
Yeah.
Global Comics. If anybody's on there,
Okay.
we've been part of.
They were sponsors of the Heroic Awards this year. and
Oh,
last
nice.
year.
Yeah, that's great avenue for us creators. I was part of Comixology Submit when they were taking indie creators, and that's been extremely helpful. That really is probably one of the biggest supporters of us because that costs nothing.
Yeah.
You know, really, it's just your time to put it up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we sell digitals through the Kickstarters, I mean, they carry the campaign, right? That's
Yeah.
no overhead cost except for the cost of the book to create. It really is extremely helpful. I like digital comics. I'm so grateful to have so many. We have people around the world who can read our comics who wouldn't be able to afford the shipping.
Yeah.
I think digital is great.
Because that's how when I started picking up comics again, I did have some paperbacks that I went to, but overall, I went to Comixology, their guided comic view, and I was like, oh my God, that's how this goes. It was so easy to just get in there, find something, and read it, whether it's from DC, Marvel, Independent, doesn't matter. Comixology was always that kind of like Switzerland of comics. Of like,
Absolutely.
no, come on over. We got everything, whatever you want. And that's where I got into comics. But overall, I find myself going to places like Ollie's where I can just go and find a whole bunch of compendiums and really just, oh, yeah, this is a number 1 through 7. I will take all of these for $1 each and just go through, because there's something about the paper copies that I love. I feel so like it's a little bit of a pride thing where your comic rack starts to fill up behind you, and you're like, well, got to buy this because I need someplace else to put comics.
Yep.
And
I
you
love a
just
good
slowly
collected
fill it.
edition. I love a good oversized hardcover collection. So I think I'll always be that way. But if I don't want to wait around, I love having the option to buy digital. And you can't buy everything either in paper.
Right.
We'll be crushed by it eventually.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I definitely will do that too. And I'm an in stock trades guy, so yeah, if I liked reading it in digital, I'm often double dipping or even triple dipping sometimes when they then later put out a nice hardcover edition.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with that.
Right.
And that's a dream of mine too, part of this series. And again, I was with another company for about 10 years when I started my career. A buddy of mine, we teamed together and then we kind of mutually parted. And I knew when I came back this time around after taking a couple of years off, that was part of my goal, is to get more shelf books. Selfishly, I want to see. I was part of a few collected editions back, in the other days, but this time, like Drumsticks of Doom, I want collections. I eventually want an oversized hardcover of it. I want something I can kind of have pride in put on my shelf and say that's my book. I didn't do that enough early on in my career. A lot of short stories, a lot of anthologies, a lot of stuff didn't get collected, and I said this time I need to have that goal for all or most of my books need to get on a shelf.
Right.
Then I can retire.
Plus, it's a great thing that the fans come back and can I get an autograph?
Yeah.
Get a picture with the book.
Yeah.
I mean, not everybody lives, the closest, convention that you're at. I mean, some may live a little further out, and they will go to CTE2, and they're from Nevada or wherever else. They will. Can I get an autograph? Can I get a picture? They really, really like it too.
Oh yeah.
That's
and I do think Western comics need to catch up more with that. I think more people want the fat coffee table books, and we're a little bit behind again. Like I said, selfishly, I really don't like floppies. I think they're way outdated.
Yeah,
so
I know.
not everybody
it's
wants
a
to
thing about it.
deal
The
with that.
floppies just growing up. I mean, that's all I've ever known is floppies.
Yeah, I
Until
know, but I
the
was a
mid-late
compendium
80s
guy.
to early 90s. All of a sudden, manga, this thick, huge, King James Bible looking thing, and I go, what the hell is this? But the artwork was fantastic, but they, that's just how they did it. They put it on, but it was like, slave masters to get these things, artwork done. I mean, it's like, but floppies are still great. I mean, I got to get this guy to a comic book shop, and buy a floppy disk.
I'm telling you, I love I did really appreciate the digitals. Like when I do the Heroic Awards, the videos for them and the category of videos, I need digital copies so I can really make it pop. But now I have all these digital copies that I have to go through and I have to look at. I'll fall on the grenade, I know, but it's nice to having all of this and then getting to see the very best of the best and what came out from the Heroic Awards and who actually got on top and stuff like that. And I actually, when I was out at Blue Hen Comic-Con, I got to meet up with Concrete Comics, and they've been in a couple of the past years. But anytime that there's any kind of independent run award show or something, people are kind of wary about it. Heroic Awards has been constantly, even when I was out at the Blue Hen, some of the people I'm talking to, they are already knowing and acknowledging the heroic awards as to being, because they just have 100 judges, and those judges are segmented from which category they're actually judging. So it's not we just have 100 judges judging everything. It's these guys are color guys, these guys are letter guys, and from year after year, the one really surprised I saw from this past year, and you really hit the nail on the head with manga, because with the anime boom in America, manga is making its way over now as well, and some people want manga. And the Kitaru Witch Hunter was one of the big winners of the Heroic Awards this year, and it felt like watching an anime. It was just a regular, seemed like a regular Western manga.
Yeah. Was that floppy though, the original, or did he give it to you in like a manga form? It was the manga art.
It was manga art.
Art, yeah.
Art-wise.
Okay.
It was kind of like a manga half-breed of mixed with a comic flair, but that's what we're getting into, is with people mixing and matching ideas of what they want in the indie industry.
That's
not
what
just
art is. That's what art is. Mixing, matching until you get something that is you, or something that appeals. That's all it is. Good artists find that middle ground. Saranko brought in op art. Pictures that he actually cut and paste onto comic books, along with Jack Kirby. I mean, just do it. Go for it. I mean, I'd say 100%. Throw it up against the wall and see who throw it up against a pole and see who salutes it.
Yeah.
Mr. Lemmy Kilminster, thank you.
But, I mean, I love the premise of your comic. I think that everybody needs to go out there. I saw your Kickstarter was essentially funded.
Yeah, we did. They made us sweat a little bit. We had a lot of late comers jumped back in, but we appreciate it. We always do well backer number wise. We're very fortunate. Again, some of that is doing it for a long time. You've got people have the trust in the product you're going to put out.
Sure.
Right.
But we crossed the line again. We haven't. We've only had a couple of stumbles on Kickstarter in my 15 years doing it, so I'm very grateful that we always find a way to kind of get over the line.
That's good. And Frank usually asks this question, but where are you? Any kind of influences? Like who were the artists that really spoke to you, that brought you into this kind of realm of making your own comics?
Well, growing up, I never really aspired to make comics. That was more my older brother. He would get the little blank white books at the store and draw his little Rob Liefeld knockoff teams and make the stories. And I would always, love seeing him do that. Again, it wasn't until I was a little older, in my mid-20s, and kind of the whole band thing started winding down. I met a bunch of cool people online who, made independent comics. And to that point, hadn't even really occurred to me, as really I was only a Marvel reader up to that point. I was like, oh yeah, you can just make your own comics, put them on paper, print them, and put them out. I didn't realize, the barrier to entry was much lower than I thought, and reached out to a couple people on that forum and just said, hey, would anybody be interested in collaborating? And awesome and now longtime friend Bob Garronellis reached out and said, yeah, I'm an artist, let's work together. And we've been working together ever since. But my influences, though, once I started to think, about what comics I wanted to create, put out in the world, I'm a big Sam Keith guy. I think he's the greatest. His art is just phenomenal. He's always been an influence. But I think that also helped mold where I wanted to be, because when he got to do his independent work in the Max, and then he did, For Women and Ojo and some of these other stories that were very bizarre. He's a very bizarre writer. I won't even say he's a great writer, but he is himself, right? And I said, if I'm going to do it, I want to feel like I'm creating books only I can create. And he's just, in that sense, he's fearless. He does, part of it was he was able to, right? He was successful enough. But, whatever kind of story he wanted to write, to whatever, he was very emotional in his stories, very, much more grounded than, even though Max looked like a superhero, it was more about the characters. So he was a big influence. Jeff Lemire early on is a big influence for me. Matt Kint, I like a lot as well. Ed Brubaker, I like a lot. I may not be I'm a lot more, put a lot more humor in than those guys do. I kind of always lean on that aspect, but those are the ones that come to mind that really influenced me kind of early on. Brian Michael Bendis and his runs on like Powers and stuff, that was, one of the first like indie books that I actually branched out and said, oh wow, there's, these, and I was into the Image boom then, but didn't really think of it when I was a kid. as independent comics.
Right.
Until I realized, when I was older, like these they still own all their stories. They can do what they want. They don't have editors telling them what to do. And again, Brian Bendis and his early work was a big influence on that too.
Yeah, just realizing that, permeating that comic book membrane
Yes.
is not all that far off, is really the biggest step. Like, oh, I can just walk this way? Like, yeah, your whole life you could have walked that way. Just made a right. Never did.
Yeah.
It's like finding out there's like a whole other side of town that you lived on.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, this is here?
Which is one of the coolest parts of the medium. Really, maybe novels are the same, right? If you want to, you just type a novel, print it out yourself, whatever. But comics is, it's not like TV or music or these other ones. There's a bigger barrier to entry, right? Comics, though, if you do the work and you put the work in and your book is of quality, you can get it on the shelf right there next to Amazing Spider-Man, right? If I did the whatever, it may not be in every shop around the world, but again, you have that opportunity to be close to the people that you admire. And I just think that's so cool, right? Like
Sure.
I could start drawing a comic tonight, and by tomorrow, I'm not much of an artist. It wouldn't look great, but it's your thing. It's done. You can just do it. And then maybe you Xerox a couple copies and hand them out, and you're satisfied with that.
Right.
Again, the barrier to entry is so low, and that's what's cool about the comics medium.
Well, and that's where also, like, one of the things that you notice from the Heroic Awards is best story. A lot of these best stories, you have black and white going right up against color, and it's just, what is your idea? When it boils down to it, when you look at the story, which one is best? When you look at indie and you boil down each individual story, each one is its own little fingerprint of all the creators that had hands in it.
Yeah, it had a finger in it, yeah.
And you don't, a lot of times with indie, you often think, oh, it's just one guy, in his, bedroom or in his garage, and he's just kind of making all these sketches and hitting the print press, but it's a lot more than that. There's a lot more people involved in that.
There is, but it can just be one person's vision or two people,
Yeah.
Again, Dan and I are the co-creators of a book, and we've brought in a couple other people to help on covers and stuff like that. But yeah, if you did just want to sit down, you can see your vision all the way through. Again, you're not going to get that mostly in other mediums, right? There's going to be a lot of other fingers in the pie. And that's cool about comics too. It's one of the forms where you can see the truest form of the author's story or the small creative team that is working together. And that's kind of cool too. I think it takes away a lot of the fluff and the other things that go along with, Hollywood things and producing music or whatever. It's very, it's just has that independent feel,
Yeah,
this is the author's vision presented on the page.
One of the best things about the indie comic, realm is that creators will just cross the barrier and say, hey man, I'd love for you to help me on this thing. I'd do a cover for me, do a page for me, ink this for me. They're always so loving and accepting of your idea. And hey, why don't I bring you on board over here? And now we're doing a thing, and now it's very much that, a rising tide lifts all ships. It's a very loving community in and of itself.
I agree. And maybe it's because I'm in it, it's harder to see the outside. Again, I just don't feel like you're going to get that camaraderie in other walks of life. Like that was very eye-opening to me early on. We were doing this anthology called Banthology. I said, I really want to bring in someone who has a background in music, but also an artist, on a bigger scale to get attention. And I reached out to, at the time, Ryan Kelly was doing, was working with Brian Wood on, some huge projects. And I was like, he's not going to email me back. He emailed me back. He was super into it. He's like, I love the idea. I have kind of an idea of, somebody jamming on the cover in like an empty club. And even this is years later, so I don't feel like I'm breaking his trust, but he even was like, oh, you're an independent company. I'm not going to charge you my full rate. And I was like, no, Ryan, like we have money. We'll give you money. And he's like, no, this is it was just such an eye-opening experience that, again, you're not that far away from the people that you admire. And oftentimes you'll find, that they do want to work with you, and they get excited about your project and want to support you and be part of it. And that's just a cool part of the community to me.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of the best. And like you said, you're not really going to find that anywhere else. I mean, one of the jobs that I have held in my many years of podcasting was in the automotive industry. Very different fields in and of itself, just as in general. But then I take my niece to the Blue Hen Comic-Con, and she has her artwork on display, and heads were snapping to look at the fan art that she did on these canvases. And she got attention from vendors and, con goers alike all weekend. And it was her first time showing any kind of artwork
Nice.
off, and she sold a canvas. So that's one thing that, the community is out there and loving. And it was one of the vendors who had these awesome anime blankets and those spoof movie posters with anime characters in them. And they were selling like hotcakes left and right. This guy went off, helped support somebody else in their first con going, bought a piece for his son. And I was telling her that's one of the best parts of just even con life is that he brought that picture back to his son. His son is now going to stare at that his entire childhood, looking at that artwork of like, yeah, that's my Sonic painting. And you just made that kid's childhood. And all you did was it took you so much to do it, and so much, just the opportunity to sit out and say, yeah, I have this for sale for you.
Yeah, that's what I always tell people, and they're always like, you've been doing it for a while. What's your advice? People coming in the industry. Just create something. You know what? Put it out there. Don't. Now, if you're asking me how to make money in the industry, I haven't figured that out yet. I can't tell you that part. That's a separate question. I think people intermingle that too often. If you just want to create, again, the barrier to entry is very low, and you're part of the community. Again, you get your book in a couple shops around town, and you're part of the community. You don't. There's some people who are knuckleheads, just like anywhere.
Yeah.
But like you said, by and large, people are accepting. And again, if they see you tabling in a show, you're part of the community, right? Like,
oh yeah.
And that's cool. Again, I can't tell you how to make money off of it and make a living at it. That's tougher. But if you just want to make art and be part, of a community and create a comic, you can do that.
Yeah, it's the raw expression and the power of that. And, that's very much getting them while they're still young. And letting them know, like, hey, you have this ability right now. You can just spend money, buy a table, put your artwork there, and people will love it. Letting someone know that is an option. Because, when I was a kid, nobody told me I could just, sit behind a microphone all day. Or I could go make chocolate and then just sit behind a table and sell that. Nobody gave me the option. Nobody told me that if you put your all into it, you have a good idea, you put it out there on paper, and the people love it, they will buy it, and then you have that idea out there forever.
Absolutely.
No amount of like technology that could take it down off the internet or erase it. It's right there physically in their hands. So outside of an old-fashioned book burning, I think your idea is safe. But you never know. Right. But where is the next con that people can get you at?
Well, I'm again, being a little bit older in the community, have 2 kids. I don't do too many big cons. I try to do C2E2 every year, but usually the table cost is a little bit too much for me. But I've done I do a lot of the smaller shows. We're fortunate. I live right outside Chicago in Illinois.
Okay.
We're going to be at the Comic and Cosplay Convention at Sound Growler Brewery on August 30th. If you're in the area, it's in Tinley Park. That's, I think, my last show for the year. And in 2026, I'm again hoping to get back to C2E2 again. I stay semi-local with most of the conventions that I do, and I'm fortunate. Again, we have a lot of like small and mid shows around here, which it's not every area has that, right? Not everybody has. Yeah. They only have the one big show a year, and they kind of have to do it. We have tons of small ones. One of my favorite is Northwest Indiana Con. I'll be at in February of 2026. That's a great mid-level convention for families. The table price is good. It's one where you can be confident that you're not going to leave with not making your table feedback. So those are the ones that I kind of stick to these days.
Right. Yeah, I mean, table fees are always the big hurdle on getting in there in some of them, especially you get into the bigger cons, you got a table, sure, but they're not there for you. You go to New York Comic Con, you're getting
Yeah.
ran by
It's
at
a
full
reality.
speed.
Yeah.
So having the small to mid cons to be able to go to and say, you know what, everybody is looking at every table at those cons. They're all looking at everything and all the vendors' wares. So that's your best at attention, I would say,
Yeah.
is at those mid levels.
And part of, you know, coming back here with, you know, in my second half of my career with part-time comics was being a little more intentional in the shows that I do. And, you know, I'm okay with, you know, hanging out and, you know, spending a couple bucks to meet some fans and get some books moved. But, you know, I understood, you know, now that's also time away from home, time away from things you need to do, you know, with your family and stuff like that. So I have to be a little more picky and also understanding and not, at first I would be upset. I would do a show and be like, you know, I really tried to sell books all weekend and people don't want them. But again, understanding you have to diversify your table. You have to have different types of products. And now I think I'm getting to there where, you know, I can be more comfortable. You know, I'll definitely walk away at least with table. You know, again, I sometimes would get frustrated and say, you know, I sold 30 books this weekend. I still didn't make table. Well, again, if you don't have the bigger ticket items like trade paperbacks or, you know, stuffed animals or stuff like that, that really eats up, you know, your table costs. And that's when you start seeing, you know, profit and stuff like that. So I think it's being more intentional now. And as I've gotten Drumsticks of Doom, and the collection does great at shows. Again, it's easier when you sell 20 trade paperbacks than you sell 50, you know, single issues. So
Yeah.
now that I've got, you know, CPS, Child Possession Services, we'll have a collection next year, and Drumsticks of Doom Volume 2 will be out. That'll really be the time when I'm like, okay, now I have enough diverse products where, you know, I'm confident, you know, getting back in the ring in these bigger shows, you know?
Well, I mean, diversification of your table is a very good thing, because that's one reason why my table did so well at the con. I had chocolate, I had artwork, we had, you know, everything there. My books didn't sell. If I just went there with my books, I would have been disappointed. A lot of people saying, "Hey, man, this is really good. You want to buy it?" Like, no, thank you.
Yeah,
no,
you got to match the con with the product and the product.
But
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
diversification of my table allowed me to say, "Yeah, but look at her artwork," and they're like, "Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I would buy that." That
and
is
once that kind of clicked with me too, is like, yeah, C2E2 is great, but you're also in a sea of, you know, hundreds of other creators.
Sure.
But when I've started doing like Halloween based events, and, you know, like there's a great one in our area that does like a halfway to Halloween, and I always do well there. I've done some music themed shows because we have a music themed book,
Right.
and people are like, oh, I'm often the only, you know, comic creator there, and they're like, oh, that's cool, you have a music themed comic, you know, let me check it out. Picking the shows that you do, you know, putting yourself in a, now again, I have dozens of books in general, so I feel like I can shift a little bit. Like again, it's a Halloween themed one, I'm going to put, you know, Child Possession Services and Drumsticks of Doom to the front, because those will be the ones, you know, people are kind of in that vein.
Sure.
So that helps too, you know, kind of having, because I do find, you know, a lot of my peers that are younger and just getting into it, and they're like, well, you know, I have this awesome book, and it's like, well, you do have an awesome book, but if you're trying to hand sell 400 copies of it in a weekend, you probably won't even literally have the time to talk to that many people.
Yeah.
You got to offer, again, don't let it hurt your feelings. Some people just want to come up and get the chocolate or get the anime picture of something they know already.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. So don't beat yourself up too much, but don't put yourself in a position to fail either. And just come with your one comic and say, I have one comic, people should buy it. You know, that's not the way the world works.
No, yeah. People want a lot of stuff at the table. It's almost like they don't care what is on that table. They just want to be able to pick from it. And having like plushies, that's an impulse buy of someone who just loves plushies. They're like, I need this. And now you got a sale from somebody who honestly probably never even in a million years thought about anything on your table, but they saw that plushie and they're like, I got to have this.
Well, as
And
they're
then you
looking
give
at
them
the
their little
plushie-
business card or have them scan your QR code, and hopefully,
Yeah.
you know, down the road you run into them again. So yeah, that's a way to kind of, it takes some of the pressure off of you too, to have to feel like you're exhausting yourself trying to, again, pitch your book every 10 seconds and then have the person go, oh, you know, I'm going to keep walking, I'll come back later.
Yeah. Because you also
know.
get those people who are, they are buying for Christmas.
Well,
They
that
go to
depends on where
cons
you are. It
to
depends on where you
buy
are.
for Christmas. I've ran into a couple of them just at Blue Hen alone this year. Some people do it. I've been doing it for years now. love getting Christmas presents at cons when I can because I'm already there, but if some people, it's like they round up the family, let's go down to the con, and everybody gets something.
Love those people.
Yeah.
So there's an event for every butt, I guess you could say. But doing the small and mid-level cons is a good way to just keep getting your product out there, and because you never know who's going to be at those shows. Some people just want something, hey, this is something to do on the weekend, and they'll go, and you got somebody that never even would have been in your realm of possibility, all just by being at the table. So you may not sell anything, or you may, get 5 fans for life.
There you go.
If they look at your plushie, they look at your anything, you can say, hey, I have this. They're looking. They're at your table looking. So that's the point where, your pitch goes in, because if they're just like glancing at everything, but if someone looks at the plushie to say, oh, I want this, well then, hey, well, this goes with that. That goes with this,
Mm-hmm.
just like, belt and handbag, so.
Sparkly
definitely helped us.
Yeah.
Sparkly tablecloths also help if you want to know.
Well,
catch their eye.
For some things, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I got plain black. I'll have to upgrade.
Yeah, I don't have sparkly.
Mine's are boring.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, just that they're kids, they need something to shine in their face. Like, bam, right there, something shiny. Yeah. I'm going towards it. Yeah. But, it's just a few decades from now until we get like the luminescent paint on covers, and you'll have like comics that will pop out and glow and
little holograms popping up.
They got it.
They got it.
They got it. Punch, cut, whatever you want, man. You name it. Glow in the dark. I've got a Ghost Rider glow in the dark skull, and
I've still got my Max glow in the dark one. I remember that in the hollow foil Spider-Man covers.
It's here.
A lot of foils still out there.
Oof, yeah.
So we're going to drop all the information for your Kickstarter below so people can get that for the Drumstick of Destiny. And obviously, if they're in your area, we want them to go out to all the cons that you're going to be at. And any other projects you have, just let us know. You're always welcome back on the Tales.
No, I really appreciate it. Again, if you're listening to this late, we usually do late pledges. Kickstarter does that now, which is awesome. It's kind of like keep your store open,
Sure.
for a month or so afterwards. We pretty much always have one going. So if you click on it and it's gone by now, we always got one in the pipeline. Drumsticks of Doom will be wrapping up next year. We've decided that it's been a couple years since we started it. We have enough of a fan base now, and Dan and I need to do it before we get too old. So final issues will be in 2026 with the final trade coming after that. So yeah, if you want to get caught up now, it's a good time before we finish the series out in 2026.
Now is the time. We'll have you back on because a good ending, you gotta nail the landing. Especially with a proper musically themed comic, it's like coming back out for the encore. You gotta nail it. You gotta hit all the notes that the people like. So the fans, I'm sure, are waiting, biding their time until they can see how you're gonna elegantly tie that together.
Yeah, and I sure hope so. Again, we've had tons of support. This is definitely the flagship title for us, and the response to it has been great. And I'm a little sad to see it finally wrapping up, but we kind of had a plan in place of it being 10 to 12 issues to start, and I feel like we don't need to push it too far, but maybe leave the door open for other stories in the universe if people are excited and we want to revisit it.
Sure.
That's always a good possibility because then you have different characters crossing over in the future, and it adds to that aha moments of when fans are continuing to read your work. Which
just boggles my mind. Again, from my first Kickstarter in 2009 or 10 to now, some of the names still come back, and it's just like, that's a humbling experience, which is part of what I like about Kickstarter. You can see and interact with all the people backing. Some people, have fulfillment companies that fulfill the Kickstarters. I still like printing the labels myself, seeing who's backing, putting a little extra in for them or sending them a message, saying, hey, do you want me to sign your book? Or
right.
It's a humbling experience to kind of see the support after all these years,
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's got to be, one of the things that kind of just touches you in the feels. But that is another reason why to put that extra effort out there and do the labels yourself and the fulfillment, and interacting with the fans. It adds to the whole experience for the fan. They know that it's not just another, another mark on the calendar for someone. It's it's their passion, and they're actively, engaging with the fan base. So especially that's something that you can't do with Marvel, right? You can't do that with the bigs. Go to your favorite writer and be like, hey man, I really like how you did this. He'd be like, okay, who are you?
Yeah, next. Yeah, I enjoy that part of it. Sometimes it's good to not blow up too much. You stay humble.
Yeah, staying humble.
But I do appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah, again, if you have a spot in the future,
Absolutely,
I'm always
man.
happy to chat indie comics.
Absolutely. We want the fans to go out and hunt you, John. And I always like to end off the podcast the same damn way, and that's that we love you, we miss you, and we want to see you at the next hunt. Until then, game on, boys and girls. Bye-bye.